He didn't know he was heading to the wrong address, or that he would be met with something dangerous. Night had fallen, and a heavy silence blanketed the city. The clock struck 2:16 a.m., and the city lights flickered dimly like weary lamps. There was no wind, but an oppressive stillness pressed down on Joseph's shoulders. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. Half awake, he reached for it, squinting at the screen. A message appeared. Short, urgent, hurry. There's so much blood. They're dying. An unknown number. An unfamiliar address. Joseph paused, rubbed his eyes, and tried to listen to his heartbeat. Someone needed help. Maybe it was a wrong number, maybe a wrong address. Yet curiosity and a strange sense of responsibility propelled him into action. The same message came again a minute later. The same words, the same urgency. Joseph's unease deepened. Loneliness, night, and the unknown all pressed together, constricting his chest. He drew a deep breath, grabbed his coat, slipped on his shoes, and stepped outside. Under the yellow glow of the streetlights, the cracks between the cobblestones stood out. Each step echoed, the night's silence amplifying his own heartbeat. The phone vibrated again. Faster, you're close, hurry. Joseph's shoulders tensed. The message wasn't just giving an address. It felt as if an unseen presence was breathing down his neck. Each step heightened the tension, but he didn't stop. He called a taxi, which arrived through the empty streets. When the driver furrowed his brows, Joseph's heart skipped a beat. Those streets, they're deserted. Beyond here isn't safe, the driver warned. I'm sure, Joseph replied curtly, scanning the darkness of the streets. The taxi wound its way past old buildings, empty storefronts, and abandoned cars. Visibility was near zero. The city seemed to be holding its breath. When Joseph reached the taxi stop, he jumped out. He shivered at the sight of the narrow, cobbled street before him, flanked by dark buildings. The door of one building hung ajar. There was no light, but a faint tremor seemed to emanate from within, as if the house itself was waiting for him. He stepped inside. The wooden floors creaked underfoot. Dust hung in the air, carrying the smell of old belongings, damp wood, and rusty metal. In the center of the living room stood a bloodied chair, its armrests dark with crimson stains. Drag marks streaked the floor beside it. His phone kept buzzing. The vibration made Joseph's palms sweat. He took a deep breath and lifted the receiver. Hello? He received no reply, only a low mechanical interference, a sound resembling human breath, but unmistakably not human. Joseph froze. He hung up, yet the phone kept ringing. Even unplugged, it continued to call. A sound came from above, heavy, slow footsteps. Joseph's heart pounded, his breath quickened. He lifted his head toward the stairs. No shadow was visible, yet the sound was deliberate, systematic, and terrifying. Joseph retreated silently, pressing himself into the corner of the living room. The phone screen suddenly lit up. A new message appeared. You're late, look behind you. Joseph's breath caught. He fixed his eyes on the darkness. At that very moment, a crash echoed from upstairs. A thud, signaling that something was descending the stairs. The silence mixed with the noise, creating a maddening rhythm in Joseph's mind. The air inside had grown heavy. The darkness seemed alive, pressing down on Joseph. Every corner, every shadow appeared to move as if watched by unseen eyes. Leaning against the corner, heart racing, Joseph stared into the gloom. The rhythm of the footsteps from above merged with the room's silence, each step cutting his breath shorter. The creaking of the floorboards felt like a herald of a presence drawing ever closer. The room was so silent that Joseph could hear his own heartbeat and breath as if they were a drum. The message on the phone still glowed. You're late, look behind you. He froze, eyes locked on the screen. Hands trembling, he lifted the receiver again. But this time, he noticed something. The handset was no longer cold. It moved subtly in his hand, vibrating as if alive. With shaking hands, Joseph slowly stepped back from the table and surveyed the room. The walls of the living room were alive with whispering shadows. An old painting caught his attention. The figure on it strangely resembled Joseph himself. Its eyes seemed to follow him wherever he looked. He moved cautiously toward the stairs, softening each step. The boards creaked underfoot, yet the footsteps from above remained heavier, more deliberate. Joseph's breathing quickened, his shoulders tensed. As he climbed, the crash of a frame falling from the wall echoed. He turned, seeing nothing. Were they tricks of shadow, or was someone really there? He couldn't tell. When he reached the upper floor, the corridor was dimly lit. Old, yellowed photographs adorned the walls. Strikingly, each picture depicted scenes that mirrored moments from Joseph's life. Him, alone in a park as a child, studying in a university library, even sitting in his room just last night, all captured within these photographs. Joseph's heart nearly stopped at the sight of the photographs. As he stepped cautiously among them, he noticed a closed door at the end of the corridor. The door was slightly ajar, cold air seeping through the crack. Joseph approached, each step colliding with his own fear. He reached out, gently touching the handle, and pushed it just enough to leave it ajar. Inside, darkness stretched like a tunnel. No light, only the faint undulations of old rugs underfoot and shadows flickering against the walls. He took another step, the creak of the wooden floorboards echoing through the space. The air inside had thickened, each breath more difficult to draw. Just beyond the door stood an old chair. But this time, it was not empty. A fleeting shadow, barely noticeable, passed beside him. A silhouette that should not have existed, yet it had. Joseph held his breath. The shadow remained still, silent, cold, and lethally present. Another step, and his phone vibrated again. On the screen, a single word: "I found you." Joseph's hand shook, his heart threatening to leap from his chest. At that exact moment, a whisper drifted from the other side of the door. Not a word, only breaths, twisted, mechanical, inhuman breaths. Joseph slowly stepped back, eyes fixed on the shadow within the doorway. Time seemed to freeze. Every second amplified the terror inside him, his heartbeat racing faster and faster. As he moved along the corridor, he noticed a wall panel shift slightly. The wooden panels creaked softly, and a subtle sound rose from beneath the wall as if tracking his steps. At the corridor's end stood another door, unlike the others. Its wood was cracked and blackened with age. An old lock hung broken, the door slightly ajar on its own. Joseph hesitated, then took a step closer and pushed it open. Complete darkness awaited inside. Yet the presence of something unseen was palpable. Another step, the creak of the floorboards underfoot mingling with his labored breathing, deepened the room's oppressive darkness. The room was filled with old furniture, dusty books, and broken items. Yet the most striking thing was the antique telephone on a desk in the center. It continued to ring. Hesitant, Joseph lifted the receiver, and a new message appeared on the screen. "I am watching you." His hands trembled, almost dropping the phone, but he froze, eyes locked on the shadow in the darkness. Slowly, it moved, gliding from the corner of the room toward him. Silence was gone, replaced only by Joseph's ragged breath and the quiet but undeniable movement of the shadow. Joseph was hypnotized, unable to retreat. The shadow passed over the desk, lifting the phone's receiver with it, and disappeared into the darkness of the room. His eyes widened in horror, his breath rapid. Every second, adrenaline and fear fused together. Then, from above, a heavy crash resounded. A thud echoed from beneath the floorboards within the room. Instinctively, Joseph turned to the right, but saw nothing. Only deep darkness, silence, his own breath. Yet the sense of a presence lingered. His heart pounded violently. Breath caught, yet he had to move. Shadows, walls, and furniture formed a labyrinth, each corner hiding a dangerous secret. Joseph pressed forward. With every step, with every inhale, the tension escalated. At that moment, one of the walls shifted slightly, releasing a gust of cold air from the floor. Joseph recoiled, feeling movement underfoot. Eyes fixed on the darkness, he realized a silhouette was sliding toward him from beneath an old rug. Suddenly, his phone vibrated again. Another message appeared. "It's too late now." Joseph's breath hitched. His heart nearly stopped, but he couldn't move. The unknown, the darkness, and the silent terror had seized him completely.